Cheap ass basses! Can they really do the job, or is it true that you get what you pay for? Tougher to play. Do not recommend. Resale value. Throw your money in a hole. Garbage. I grabbed 5 of the cheapest basses on the interwebs from places like Amazon and eBay to see if they're a good way for you to get started on the cheap, or if they're a waste of your hard-earned cash and you should spend a little more. As usual, this video has no sponsors, no affiliates, no BS. Let's find out if you can actually get a solid working bass for $100 or less. Then we'll fix them all up and donate them all to music students who actually need them. Ooh, B, pick B. No, Noob Josh, you're not in need, you're just a noob. I'm skeptical of basses this cheap, but I haven't actually tried any of these brands, so let's see if my skepticism is justified. Here's how I tested these suckers. 1, I recorded direct into my interface with a little compression, no super expensive amps, preamps, mics, or plugins, so the sound you're gonna hear is the sound you can actually get with these basses. 2, I used out-of-the-box setups and strings, just exactly what you get delivered for $100, and we'll see how that went in a minute. Oh, shit. 3, I compared all precision basses, same style pickups, same settings. P-basses are a great way to get classic, foolproof bass tone, and this way we can compare apples to apples instead of apples to jazz basses. I can't hear anything. Enough talk, let's hear some tone battles, then we'll talk about playability and build quality. Finally, I'll pick my favorite of the 5 and then test it against a more expensive bass in a blind tone off to find out if you can hear the difference in price. Let me know which one you thought sounded the best in the comments below. Honestly, just from a playing perspective after playing all of them, I think they all sounded pretty similar. But you can't tell how good an instrument is just by the sound. Playability and build quality are also super important, especially for beginners. If your strings are like a mile off the neck and the edges of the frets are cutting into your hand, you'll be miserable, and even my beginner to badass course might not save you. I'm gonna walk you through each of the 5 basses really quickly, just in terms of playability, build quality, because if we talk in too much detail, it's gonna be really boring. Okay, the Glarry, a pro of this bass is this yellow finish. It's pretty dope. Other than that, there's no huge issues. The frets aren't sharp on the sides. It held the setup pretty well since I've gotten it. There's no buzzing frets. The tuners are pretty cheap feeling, like they're a little bit loose on the gears, but that's kind of normal for all these basses. My main complaint, which is not specific to the Glarry, but there's major neck dive issues with all these basses. If I kind of let the strap jiggle around, you can see what it wants to do, because whatever wood or wood-like substance they're using for the bodies is so light that these basses come out relatively neck heavy, and so the way they pull on the strap is they just want to do this. One last thing on the Glarry, this isn't causing any playing issues, but I'm noticing that the neck joint is kind of loose. There's like a little bit of space around all the sides of where the neck meets the body, and that's not how nice basses look. The Harley Benton, I kind of like this one. It's got more output than the other basses, which may just be because they positioned the pickup closer to the strings. Some of the other basses, it's really like sunken in there. It plays pretty nice, it's holding its setup decently, and there's a lot less neck dive than on the Glarry because this body is a lot heavier. Not like super heavy feeling, but it just doesn't weigh like featherweight like the other basses do. My biggest complaint on the Harley Benton is the edges of the frets are coming off the edge of the fretboard, which means I'm all shredded up here on my index finger from the G string side and also on my thumb from the E string side, so that super sucks. My understanding is that can happen for a couple different reasons. One is the frets aren't cut right to start with, and two is that the wood shrinks during shipping or over time or whatever. I'm guessing this is a wood shrinkage thing. The frets seem to be cut well, they're not like just chopped off on the edges, but the neck did shrink up in shipping, and now my hand is shredded, so. Okay, the ZTDM, some mix of those letters. What kind of frickin' brand name is that? Okay, anyway, the best thing about this bass is this paint job and this pick guard. This is just hot, right? The pickups are like stuck in the body, like you could probably fix that, but again, I'm looking at like if you're a beginner and you don't know how to set up basses, what are you gonna be working with? And you're gonna be working with pickups that are super sunk in the body, so the output on this bass is really low, so your volume knob is only gonna get you so far. The worst thing about this bass is the frets were way too big for the neck when I got it. This one was so bad that I had to break my no setup rule and take it to my dad's shop and fret file it down on the edges, because I literally couldn't play it. They were cutting me up left and right. I was actually bleeding. It was so bad. Unlike the Harley Benton, which is a little bit too much frets on the sides, but I feel like it's an allowable amount for ordering a bass online. This one was just like off the charts. The Polar Aurora, a brand name that matches the paint job, which just shows you they have a lot of instruments in their lineup, clearly. Okay, what's going on with this bass? The pickups are a little bit better than on the white bass, but they're still way too far from the strings, which they should have gotten right in the factory. There's no reason that that would change as it's being shipped that I know of. The setup is okay. This one creeped up a little bit high. The frets are cut okay. They're a little bit sharp, but they're not killing me. Smalls.
You're killing me, Smalls.
All 5 of these basses, I would say, had pretty crappy strings that you would want to replace if you could afford it, but I would say this one had the worst strings. They not only didn't sound very good, but they're really, really sticky on the hand, so it's hard to shift. Also, not to sound like a broken record, but the body wood here is just like super, super light, so that means the neck dive thing happens. It also means tapping is really hard. I just realized I was trying to do some two-handed chord tapping stuff, and if you tap without your other arm on the bass, it just like moves all over the place in a way that a better instrument that actually weighed something would be a little sturdier. So don't expect to be shredding much tapping on a bass that weighs this little. Okay, the eBay bass. I literally don't know what company makes this or what the brand name is, so I'm just calling it the eBay bass. It has a nice sunburst, the knobs work, the bridge works, the pickups are okay, they're a little too far in the body, just like some of the other basses. There's some gap in the neck joint, just like some of the other basses. The only thing that really makes this bass stand out is the fact that it has a setup issue that the other basses don't. There's some buzzy sitaring stuff happening on the higher frets. So it needs some setup work that the other ones are kind of doing okay without. So I've picked my favorite cheapo bass, and it is the Harley Benton. Da-da-da-da-da. This was not a landslide victory. Sorry, Stevie Nicks. These basses were all pretty similar, but there were a few things that tipped the scales in the Harley Benton's favor for me. Tone-wise, I think I liked the Harley Benton best in the tone demos. They were all pretty similar again, but I think I felt a little bit more bottom end and also some good clarity in the top end from the Harley Benton. And a lot of that could be just because they bothered to put the pickup anywhere near the strings, whereas on a lot of the other basses it was like buried in the body. Also, I thought thought the tone knob sounded a little better on this bass than on some of the other ones. Even with the tone rolled down, it still feels like it has good bottom end, whereas some of the other ones just felt kind of like quacky, but they didn't really have the low end to support the tone roll off. Build wise, I think my favorite thing about this bass is that the wood they used for the body was more substantial than the other basses, so it has a better balance between the headstock and the body, so it's not like diving all the time. This was also the only bass of the 5 that actually had a tight neck joint that didn't have visible space between the body and the neck. The biggest downvote for me on this bass is that this particular unit came with the frets sticking out on the sides a little bit, and it's cutting into my hand ever so slightly. It's not unplayable, but it does need to be filed down a bit to be in full working order. So now let's battle this against a pricier bass and see if you can hear the extra money. I still can't hear anything. But I'm not gonna use some super expensive bass that nobody can afford. How about something that you might actually buy instead of a total cheapo, like this Squier Affinity Series PJ bass, which costs about $230 new. And we're just gonna use the neck pickup on this, so we're hearing the same P bass style sounds from both. Tell which bass was which, and did one of them sound better to you? Let me know in the comments. And now the big reveal. Drum roll, please. Drum roll! Bass number 1 was the Squier, and bass 2 was the Harley Benton. Personally, after just playing them in the room, I wouldn't say one sounds dramatically better than the other. They sound a little different. They also have different output levels that I've tried to balance for you in post, but this one came out a lot hotter in the room, so that influenced my perception. Because a lot of times when things are louder, you just think, oh, that's the better sounding one, but it's just louder. But even if they do sound a bit different, I definitely wouldn't say the Squier sounds more than twice as good as the Harley Benton, but that is the price difference. So can you get a decent bass for $100 or less? After all this testing, I would say, sorta. They're sorta decent. Yes, I thought in a lot of ways the Harley Benton stacked up okay with the Squier Affinity, but this was 1 out of 5 basses I tried, and the other 4, including the Glarry, which is another commonly seen name in this market, had gappy neck joints and these really light bodies that created a ton of neck dive, and we had some knobs that didn't work great, we had some super sharp frets, we had a bad setup. So that kind of stuff seems more likely than not is gonna happen to you if you buy a bass in this price range, and if you're a beginner, you might not even realize something is wrong because you don't have a point of reference like you would if you've been playing for decades. But this is my experience based off of just one of each of these basses from these manufacturers. Your mileage may vary, so if you own one of these basses, please let us know what your experience has been like in the comments. Maybe you're wondering why buy a $100 brand new cheapo bass when you could spend about that much on a used Squier or Yamaha or Ibanez, something like that. Well, there are kind of pros and cons for both. If you score a higher quality bass used, you'll get better materials, better build quality, plus brand name basses tend to have better resale value. So skipping all the cheapos and buying brand name used would seem to be a no-brainer, and that is what I recommend to students on a budget generally, to buy a used something like a Squier Affinity, a Yamaha TRBX 174, an Ibanez GSR 200 for around the same price as the cheapos. But if you buy used and then realize that you've got like a warped neck or something else that's really expensive to fix, you got nobody to complain to. So being able to return things if there's an issue is a big plus for buying new. But even that depends on where you buy your used instrument. If you buy on like Craigslist or whatever, then you're at a higher risk because you're just buying from a random person. If you buy on something like Reverb, then you've got some buyer protection on the website, and that helps. No matter how much you spend on your bass or whether you buy new or used, you should plan to budget for a setup, which normally costs around like $20 or $30. It'll make your bass sound its best, and you'll just have a much better time playing it. Also, I strongly recommend buying a bass in person if you can, because then you can check the fretwork and the setup, the electronics and stuff yourself, and also make sure that you enjoy playing that specific bass before you commit. Thanks for watching. Please click like if this was helpful, and subscribe for more no BS reviews. Let me know what basses I should review next in the comments. I'm gonna pack these up and donate them to people who need them. Plot twist, I've reached out to 5 local music schools. I've heard back from 0 of them. If you know any schools or students that can use some free electric basses in the San Francisco Bay Area, let me know through the contact form in the description. But in the meantime, I don't have any inspiring footage of me handing off the bass to somebody who needs it, so here are some cute kittens instead.